Audio, view, admit, erase. All right. Welcome to Research Methods. We're about, let's see, Dr. Harris, have a good day. You too. We're about 10 minutes before class begins. If you're listening right now, or if you're watching after the fact, we did not have class last week. I was out ill on Monday, and then Wednesday morning, I actually got locked out of all university systems until Friday. That was a panic-inducing moment. Let me tell you what. To have a couple days where you can't do anything at all, I did not like that. I couldn't even actually access my laptop. It was pretty rough. But I'll talk a little bit about with you where we're at in terms of methods class. I posted out a couple of quizzes. And the next assignment, which will actually feed into the term paper. So I'll have an outline out there for you. We'll talk about all that stuff in class, though. Let's see, other things going on. Spotlight for everyone. Yeah, it's me. All right, and I will be right back.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
For sure. It's kind of much pressure. Step back down by partisan criminal justice reform back in 2018.
The bell. All right, let's let some people in. Admit all. Fine. Let's see. Everyone to sit rep. All right, so we got about 5 minutes. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8 people so far. It's not bad. I got a couple of seconds still connecting to audio. We gotta give you guys a sit rep. You guys have been on Blackboard in the last 12 hours? Yeah. I popped out a whole bunch of stuff in there. Basically, what I've done is popped out a couple of quizzes, the next assignment, and what we'll get ready to do today is what I'm probably gonna hit the textbook pretty hard so we can see the elements that we've been talking about in terms of like how they present them. And then what I'll do is as we're moving through it, I'll talk about where we'll see similar things in the data sets we've been playing with. And I'll also talk about that first assignment I had you do and where that's set up. And if you guys want to play with that, I'll let you guys go to town on it because I started downloading some stuff myself. And so we'll talk about that. Let's see. In terms of other things going on, of course, we didn't have class on Monday because I was sick. And I don't know if the announcements went out for that. I posted the announcements out in Blackboard, having a lot of computer issues last week in general. Start out with Monday whenever I was trying to send those. It would give me an error that the emails would be sent in the background. And I've never seen any of the announcements, the emails that accompany those announcements I placed on the Blackboard class. I think I had 1 or 2 out of like the 5 different announcements I posted out. I had 2 of them actually show up in my inbox as sent. And so I don't know if that was something that you guys were notified about, but that announcement would be out there. So if you never know if classes is going to be taking place, if you don't know, hop on there and look at the announcements because that'll be one way that if I can't access it, at minimum, I'll put it there. Wednesday was a different story though. Wednesday is a little bit of a fun one because we had that new, I guess, security updates or whatever for our systems here. I had to update my password. And apparently I did that in the middle of a Google outage on Wednesday. Oh, yay! I got locked out of everything, like, to include my laptop. Yeah, I couldn't access anything until Friday afternoon. At that point in time, I'm probably already upset or in trouble because it's like I needed to get grades in. I'm locked out. And so I took that as an opportunity to take a nice little break. It's like, yeah, I probably could have gotten that a little bit faster resolved, but I had other things I had to do on Thursday, so I couldn't do it Thursday. But yeah, so unfortunately, I couldn't send notice to anybody about not being able to meet. I actually had that first class on Wednesday, and then immediately after class, I stepped out for a minute. I came back, and because everything went to sleep, it wouldn't let me log back in with my old password, new password, tried to reset it. Ooh, gotta love technology. It is something we are very much dependent on. So, while I'm sitting here, I'll actually pull up the class stuff too. 5. Syllabus and see where we're sitting. Yeah, so we're actually a little bit farther into this, and you'll see that as we move through the PowerPoints. Cool. So 2 minutes. So we've got research, undergrad, undergrad levels. Undergrad, grad levels. Let's see. I also want to pull up. I don't know if it will go. You're going to be sign in again. That's not my password. It is now this one. All right. So tell me what's going on in the world. Everybody up and ask that's been kind of giving me that look. But there's stuff going on. I know there is.
Election debates and
yeah, all the election season stuff's coming up. That stuff's always crazy. Let's see here. Methods in progress.
the hurricane.
Yeah, that's one.
Estimated everything.
Yeah, so that's one that's been really crazy. See how much water or the conspiracy theories about controlling the weather, that kind of stuff. It's like, guys, it's like the amount of force and energy associated with nature is unbelievable. It really is. Let's see, stuff that I've been seeing. Not a whole lot actually. I've been running constant. let's see, last week, for those of you just tuning in, I was kind of talking about that. Sorry for not sending out notice about canceling on Wednesday. I got locked out of all university systems. I was updating my password at the same time there's a Google outage. So it's like, my password got changed to something. I don't know what. And then so it took me a couple days to get access to everything back again. Monday, I was sick. I thought I sent out an announcement. When I say I thought I sent it out, I clicked all the buttons I needed to, and it told me it would send out the email announcements, but it only did it for 2 of my classes out of all the ones I sent for that day. So it's like, it was really hit or miss. And so if you don't know, keep an eye on the announcements, because that'll probably be the first place it pops up, because it sends emails automatically, in theory. But usually you won't have what had happen on Wednesday, where it's just like, no notice, no nothing. That was horrible. So first thing I want to do is give you so in terms of here and now, we've got 2 divisions of people in this class, which I like. We have both graduates and undergrads. So some of the graduates attend live, some of them are actually ones that just schedules that literally can't be here at this time, so I record it close enough. Well, and so what I want to talk with you guys about are the opportunities that you have in front of you for class as it relates to assignment 2 and of course the term paper, because the main thing I want you guys to walk out of here is to have the experience with writing up a basically a methodology chapter. It won't be, probably the 5 pages by the time you're done, but it'll be something very technical. It won't be something that you use for writing because of the steps involved. That being said, I want it to be related to something that interests you. So we have got the stuff that we developed in class, which gives you opportunities there. And then we have opportunities for those of you who might have your own research interests. And so what I'm going to do here, as well, say is, as it relates to assignment 2 in this class, let me show you what we've got going on. That's going to be share screen 1. Not that. That's going to be over. Oh, those are the data sets I start playing. Admit. And do I have one of y'all? Yes. All right. So these will be correlates to each other because I've got one set up for the undergraduate, one set up for the graduate, but they'll look the exact same. So quizzes, I popped out a couple more. And so we already had 1 and 2. This is 3 and 4 and 5. And so I guess pretty well up to date. All the quizzes in here, I think I set up the first one like this. I couldn't remember. Unlimited in number of attempts, and I think something like 10 to 15 points each. I'd have to remember what the syllabus specifies. I try to keep it aligned with that. Unlimited attempts, but pretty big pool of questions they're pulling off of. So you can take it as many times as you want. Probably won't get the same questions each time, but every time you attempt it, it's only going to save the highest record. So first time you get 100 on, it's like, the rest of it's just learning the questions if you want to, that kind of a thing. It's literally a methodological procedure called the test-retest method. The more you do it, the better people do it with their tests. And so that's why it's set up that way. The assignment, though, that's where we're getting into this. So quizzes and the exams, we do that mainly for the points aspect of it. Really, if it were just a graduate class, I probably wouldn't have those in at all. I might have just quizzes, because as you move more towards a graduate program, it's more writing intensive. You need to be focused more on the writing side of it. For this class, it's going to be that chapter 3 because it's something that you have to learn the process and then work it a little bit. And so if you are graduate, what you can do here for assignment 2 will be a little bit different. And so if I click over here to assignments, it'll see you had assignment 1. That's get you playing with the data. What I'll do next class, that's I'll bring it in here and I'll start showing you the steps for moving it around, pull out the information you need to be able to start analyzing stuff, seeing the relationships between things. As we're doing that, some of the concepts we've mentioned in here before will start popping up quite directly in the numbers. And so you'll see it like, oh, that's what that is. Yes. This one says, plan out a draft. So I gave you a couple of things. It says, review the attachments. There's a dissertation methodology right here. 6 and 12 of your textbook, because that's going to have some chapters on probably data analysis. Might be some crime stuff, and I can't remember exactly what chapters those were. From there, you want to draft out a methodology section if you're going to analyze maybe a specific crime type and a population, demographic, and at least 2 timeframes kind of thing. So what that means is what we have here. Your graduate, what you need to be thinking about, if you're doing a thesis, this is the time to do that. Draft that out. That assignment is for an initial stab in the dark. So what that is. If you look at the attachments there, what's interesting about chapter 3 versus your, I'll open those up in each different things. Then like your introduction or your literature reviews, you guys have done those a lot, I'm sure, at least a few at some point. Introductions basically tell you what's in the paper. You know that. You have a bit of a problem statement in there. That's basically what you're looking for. Literature review will give you you take in theory, what we'll focus on there, like conceptualization, what people mean by the terms they use, those relationships, that kind of thing. By the time you get to the methods section, it's like stereo directions. And so if I pull up, this is the one I used for mine. Literally what happens is it's paragraph by paragraph. You just frame the issue. Here's what it is. Here are your research questions, right? Then it goes from there. Here are your dependent variables. So whatever it is that you actually want to study, in your case is for this class, for the undergraduates, what would be easiest? And if you're interested in this graduate, it'd be really easy. 1 and 2 would be to deal with the national missing and exploited children. Plus, if you look at that SORNA stuff and start looking at those places where people disappear, that's one you deal with right away. And you can focus on this side. You can focus on this side. You could focus on the overlap there, and you can just run one of those, right? You'll have to do a little bit of a lit review, but as we're working on this in class, you can see how it works out. When I show you the outline, if you look at the outline compared to this example right here, you'll see that it is very much just very pro forma. It works you through. And so I literally set up like this. 1 paragraph, framing the issue. Make sure to include a problem statement, meaning there should be at least 1 sentence in there that identifies specifically what the problem is. You're doing something like the places to disappear. Well, like we've got, populations of people that have gone missing. Well, let's see how those things spatially cluster, right? Starting with you're not taking theory or anything like that. You don't need to worry so much about theory. I can provide that for you. If you had theory and you want to play with that, you can start putting that in here a little bit, but don't worry about that. It'd be more along the lines of digging in here would be more along the lines of a very, very light lit review. You only need 2 paragraphs, right? Go see what's out there related to the topics that you're dealing with and start using that a little bit here to identify how these things work. Your conceptual model, here it says outline logic statements for variables included. Think verbally outlining your conceptual model. You'll probably have about 2 paragraphs for this one, right? And well, between these 2, you'll have 2 paragraphs. And that'll probably take you most of the page because 1 paragraph will be pretty substantive. Next one will be 2. The second one, to some degree, that is theory. So it'll be like, with these concepts, we'll be looking at the relationship between these things, right? These things relate in this way. So if you're dealing with one example I have there is fear of crime, that kind of stuff. Like, here are the elements of fear of crime. Here are the stuff that it relates to. A little bit of that here. So I'm going to deal with my primary question is going to relate to fear of crime or places people disappear or whatever your topic is that you're interested in. From there, you'll break it down into at least a couple secondary questions, right? So when it comes to questions, in one of the early chapters, there's a section where it talks about testable questions are the biggest thing. Having a testable questions, not really that hard, but you have to cut it just right. Meaning it has to have one thing that you're actually looking for. And so if you pop over and look at the example right here, what you'll see is, this overarching primary question has 1, 2, 3, 4 different variables in there across a few different types of people at a location kind of thing. We get down into the actual questions that are studied and tested. 1-to-1 kind of thing. What's the relationship between this and this? Your hypothesis is that it will do something. This will have a significant effect on this, a significant positive effect, significant negative effect, no effect, that kind of a thing. For this one, if you're dealing with the overlap, That one's kind of interesting because it's like, I don't know if you'd actually want to find the null effect there, right? Ideally, if you start looking at the overlap between these things at a county level, you start seeing patterns present themselves there. You don't want those things to overlap. Because if you're having in places where people are restricted to certain locations that they have to live, and if that's starting to overlap with where people are going missing, then to some degree, we're influencing that and making it worse, right? And so that would be the kind of relationship you want to start to identify there. What exactly would be the elements going on here that are of substance, of consequence? And so you break that across a few hypotheses. Then you go into concepts, right? So this one's fear of crime. One for that would be, dealing with missing, right? And so you can find a whole bunch of literature on that. Big predictors there. Probably what you'd be looking at is some of those disparities there. This one had a few dependent variables, so that's why I had 3 sections. You won't need that. Next part's data. Here's where I got the data. Here's the information about the data. Here's how many people were included in the data. Here are the types of questions that the circumstances that led to it or whatever, right? That kind of stuff. And you'll do that for each of your data points. So for like this one, you have one on this. You have one on this. You have another one on this. Right? Because what we're doing is we're stacking these things together. This plus this plus this. And then we're pulling out relationships between these things that we might not have easily seen before. And if we're not dealing with these things, you do it over here with anything else. Like let's say you were interested in gun crimes. You're going to need your dependent and independent variables. And so there's a very straightforward way that they break this up. So that first section deals with, here's what this thing kind of is, it's data sources. When we talk about our dependent variables, here are the conceptualizations. After that, it moves into those research questions, that kind of stuff. Gives you more on the data. This one I've got some information about the data because I use that for some weighting stuff. After that, it moves into, here are your operationalization, right? So it's not just, here's what people mean when they say this. Here are the specific variables we used, questions we used, responses that were available, that kind of stuff. So if it was like gun crimes, here's what we considered a gun crime. That's going to be any weapon that had the presence, or any incident that had the presence of a weapon. It's a criminal incident, right? If you're doing the most broad. So it's going to be everything from carrying a weapon to negligent discharge, right? That's not the same thing as shooting somebody. Right? And so you need to clarify what it is you want on the conceptual level before you get over to the operation. Because once you've done that, they align, right? Get past the dependent variables, then it moves into key explanatory variables and control variables. Both of these are your independent variables. Controls tend to be your demographics kind of stuff because that's your population measures. Your explanatory variables, that changes depending on what theory you want to use or that kind of stuff. There are entire areas of our field where they say research is devoid of theory. That's going to be crime analysis. It's not devoid of theory, it just uses deductive reasoning instead. You get the two overlap to work better. But that's how that's going to work. And so basically you have a paragraph for each of those variables that you're using on what it is. Here's what we used. Here's what the responses were. That kind of stuff. And then get through control variables. By the time you get to that, you get to analytic strategy. That's the part you'll actually need some help with. This is one of the more brief sections because basically what this does is it specifies the types of tests you'll be using. You won't necessarily know that. This book doesn't do the best at determining that for you to show the logic structure. I've got some stuff that will show you that, but really what you end up having to do, you have to look at the level of measurement. That's normal ordinal ratio. You have to look at its shape and that kind of stuff to make any determinations as to what types of analyses you have to use if you need to make any changes to the data. And so this is where the math side starts coming in a little bit more too. And so you'll go through that kind of stuff. And on that, I think that's over here. Yeah. Let's see. Methodology. Here it outlines it. Research questions, data, unit of analysis and measure. So you state your unit of analysis. That'd be like you're doing a survey of people. It's probably going to be people, unless that survey of people branches across, like we'll say, it goes across 6 universities, and you're actually testing the differences between universities. Then your unit of analysis is the university, not the people you got the data from, which you aggregate it, right? That's how that's going to work. But we'll get into that as we move forward with that, the write-up part of it. Here it mentions analytic strategy. After all that, it says specific programs used to include version, sampling frame, level of measurement, that kind of stuff. It says correlation type, regression type. That's actually really advanced stuff. They don't even teach regression until you get into the upper levels of graduate school, but I can start showing some of the stuff now. So that's a cool opportunity right there. Aside from that, that'll get you cooking into assignment 2. And like I said, I also want to show you this, what I started playing with a little bit. So I've got your, so I've got your assignments in here, and I've started looking at that and look at how you guys put the stuff together. Great. You guys start playing with these, start finding different things. In terms of the types of stuff that you find out there, it is a nightmare finding good stuff, isn't it? You don't know exactly what you're looking for. You don't know exactly what was done with it. And sometimes you don't know if you're getting it from the place you should be getting it from, right? Yeah. Welcome to the unknown. Anytime you engage in research, you are delving right into the unknown. It's just having an idea for how much or how little you know related to it. This one was, I liked doing it this way because this is sent you into, I didn't know what I'd get. I really didn't know what I'd get. So that's why I like it so much. I know if I don't know what I'm going to get, y'all don't know what you're going to be encountering. So that's a new experience. When it comes to this type of thing, always take a perspective that starts with you. Assess what it is that you're trying to get out of this, what it is you're trying to understand, and assess your own biases, that kind of thing. So you don't let that affect it. That's a really hard thing to do. That's why you should involve multiple people. Okay. Once you get beyond that, you need to well, take a drink. I don't know where I was going with that. Well, first is trying to get some idea of what's going on in the research related to it already. Whenever you start doing this, if you use this topic for assignment 2 or your term paper, it's like have fun because that's what this is. It's all fun. First thing I'd want you to look up are places where people disappear, because you'll find that the research on this takes a different perspective. It focuses in on political disappearances and things like that. And it's like, well, people go disappearing all the time. There's all kinds of reasons why. No one really looks at it because there's other things people care about. Right? So why don't we stop and take a look at this one, see what's going on here? It's kind of a general idea. As we're looking at this, you look to see if there's not much in the research. That means there's a whole lot of stuff we can play with. Basically, this one you start getting into typologies of places. That's a different way that they attach, attack research in our field. You got those that's oriented towards people, those that's oriented towards places, and those that are oriented towards crime incidences. Those places one's the smaller of those 3. A lot of stuff focuses on people. Some stuff focuses on incidences. That picks up in the late 80s. The location-based stuff's relatively recent because mapping stuff's relatively new in the last couple of decades. So there's not a whole lot of research on it. So that's why it's a different perspective. When you start looking at the data that's available, I sent you off a couple different directions. This stuff's pretty straightforward. I didn't send you up on this one. I sent you up on this one. This one you can grab pretty easily too across the states involved. So we got 6 states that we can get, right? So we'll start with Oklahoma. Let's see. So I did this across a few different decades, but we'll start with 2020 because that's what we're dealing with. Boom. Is it going to download it? Of course not. It's going to be too big. Let's just download the whole thing and see if it takes it. Download anyway. See what it does with that. And I'll show you what that looks like a little bit. So that way you guys can get an idea for different ways to aggregate things. I'm gonna hop over to the lesson stuff in the PowerPoints. There we go. It did. All right, good. So this will be Oklahoma 2020. Boom. Let it open up. Move this off to the side a little bit so I can see it a little bit larger. All right, so you'll see that this is a very, very nasty spreadsheet. You have the spreadsheet that you put together for these people, and then you have the census data I'd ask you about, because that's going to give you some population for counties, that kind of stuff. So we can start weighting the county levels based on population, age, sex, race, that kind of thing. So if we have those measures here, we can bounce that equation, right? What's the probability that someone goes disappearing from these areas? Of course, you have to take that entire time element out of it. We'll deal with that later. But we can start to play with that a little bit. We've got populations here by county, right? And if you look, hurrah, Adair County, count percent, Alfalfa County, count percent. So every two of these is a new county, and it goes all the way over to here, right? And so there's a fair bit of stuff here. Okay. Goes total population under 559. So you have all these different age categories, 18 and over, that kind of stuff, male versus female. And so if those numbers, you can actually just determine, okay, that's your proportions of males and females. Keep going. Oh, here are your races. Talking total population, one race, total population with multiple races, that kind of thing. So you can break those numbers down. Problem is these are people. Those are counties. And so, like some of the lessons we've had before, I've mentioned things like ecological fallacy. Whenever you commit that, basically what you've done is you've taken some aggregate measure and you've applied it to someone individually, right? You're a member of this police department. It had racial disparities in its arrest records. And so therefore you yourself are a racist police officer. Ooh, no, that's not how that works at all. That's not how that works at all, right? What we need to do here is we need to go the other direction. So we need to take the information related to these people and tie it into the counties. So there's a few different ways you can do it. Probably the easiest way, same way they did it here. Set it up by counts, right? Here's how many categories I need to capture the counts I need for this county. How many people were abducted, okay? What are the numbers by race? What are the numbers by age? What are the numbers by this? Because now I can start playing with portions of that. Now I can start playing with those percentages a little bit. If I want to, I can create a regression to basically identify the disparities between this and this, and the counties that have it and the counties that don't, right? Just by playing with the numbers. But you got to get in a way that it's consumable. Right now, this is not. You can read this and understand it. In fact, if you were to look at the reports for it, the actual tables as they present them themselves, they're actually pretty readable. When you get it this way, when you look at it again, it's like, what am I looking at here? Well, I'll show you how to move that stuff around next time and how to play with that. So that's that. In terms of other things you could have had, so census not used. Let's see. So these are different P1, P2, P3, P4. Yeah, so these are different sections of the census. If you actually get on the crime data, not crime data explorer, the census data explorer, it's like they'll give you so many different types for the same kinds of things. If you just type in, I want to search for age, sex, and race, that kind of thing, it can give you anything from the state level numbers to this kind of stuff, like state level. I saw somebody that had used that. And that's good too, because that gets you in kind of the right area. It just condenses it one level higher. So you want to keep, if you're going to do state level, you have to do that across all states. You wouldn't want to do that because there's less variation. Now, if I open this up, P1, P2, P3. And this is where the confusion comes in. So if I start looking at these things, these are all for the same year, right? And we'll say, so 2020, right? No, I can't say that word. The 10-year census. I can't say that word. Decennial. Okay. So if we just look at this one, that first one, P1, total population for Adair County says it's 19,495. Next one, P2, 19,045. Next one. That one's a different number. Why is that? You have to be careful with which data sets you grab because sometimes they're subsets of other things. Between these, what you get is the intersection between the different races and ethnicities, Hispanic or non-Hispanic. So you get different numbers, right? We're dealing with the whole total population, or just dealing with the part of the population that's non-Hispanic, or the part of the population that is Hispanic, right? And so you start pulling out different numbers in different places. So you have to be very, very careful with what you're dealing with. I can close out of that because there's even more than that. If I clicked into like that, there's even more. Yeah. And so there's a lot of data out there. The thing is making sure that you could fit them together, having a method for doing so. Whenever I was older than you, it wasn't as simple as going to a website and downloading. Actually, I don't know if I've got that in here. I might be able to show you that. Research methods. That's going to be Oklahoma. Was it 2010? Yeah. So this is what I had to do. So there's 3 data sets here that aren't readable by anything. I've got to get those into some type of program to read it so I can then walk it into the actual statistics program. So then I can take these 3 data sets and combine them so that way I can get the actual data set I want to begin with. Okay. Those were just initial steps I got to get to the point to where you guys were already. That's how much the stuff changes. So it's definitely going well. All right, I didn't share anything else. What's that? I think that'll get that going for there. And so when he comes into this, have fun with it. Don't worry if you're doing something right or something wrong. What we'll do is I'll go through and I'll fix it. I'll point you in the right direction for stuff. So have fun with it. Undergraduate, I probably lean towards this stuff. If you're graduate, you have these options, plus there's something else you want to work on. Now would be the time to start doing that because that assignment 2, that's gonna be your first draft. I might break the term paper itself up into a draft and a final version, just depending on how good the assignments 2s are. They need, depending on how many hours of work they'll need each kind of thing, because those always take time to read through it. And kind of gotta go cross-reference this with this. You have the other one, that kind of stuff. But we'll get through that. We talked about assignments, quizzes, development of actual research stuff. Now let's talk about the stuff that they want you to learn. So I've kind of been avoiding the book as much as possible. So I want to try the applied side more than just following the book. Because as you're dealing with it, you get to see how stuff actually works. It's a lot like running a budget or a spreadsheet for yourself. It's just making sure that your denominations match, that it makes sense, and the logical flow between things is there. And so this one starts going to general issues in research design. So we'd already been talking about ethics. I think that was last time. Okay, so this is where it starts talking about cause and effect, and probably move into the scientific model. You've already talked about it. Here, ideally, we want to establish causal relationships. Realize that all research doesn't get there. All right, most of it's correlation in nature. Most of it's, or I should say, cross-sectional. Right. We establish time has an effect because we have multiple people at different stages in their life at this point right now. Right. Instead of seeing the effect of age across time by watching me from here for the next 10 years, they'll look at you, they'll look at me, they'll look at someone who's older. Right. And then they'll extrapolate out the differences and try to tie it across, see if it stands up across a large number of people. That's that process. Let's see. Validity and threats to validity. So you have validity, reliability, and generalizability. So valid, is it accurate? Is it right kind of thing? Validity and reliability are kind of like two opposite ends of the spectrum thing. Validity is it real, right? In terms of reliability, can you get the same thing every time? It's sort of like talking the difference between qualitative quantitative research, right? On the number side, I can tell you how close this definition fits to all of the different people who are using it, right? That's a numbers thing to some degree, right? On the other side, the meaning of those differences to each of those people, that's going to be a qualitative thing. You can't quite put a number to it. And so when you start removing the numbers, your validity increases because you're dealing with something that's in some ways more real, in some ways more abstract. It'd be like talking about Shakespeare and saying, those stories, are they real? It's like, well, to some degree they are. They're artistic depictions, but the elements there that are underlying it, that's what's being conveyed, those messages. Those messages are real, that kind of a thing. When you get to the reliability side, that's how consistent you get the same types of things. This like a qualitative thing, just think about it. Most of those are going to be things like interviews or case studies. I'm dealing with people individually. As I'm dealing with you individually and conversing, how many different conversations will you have with that singular person? How many conversations across people are really that similar? Not always, right? So that's going to be one of those things that's a numbers thing versus the qualitative side of things. Largely, we balance them out in different ways. And so here's what we'll talk about: threats to validity, threats to reliability. Generalizability is kind of in the same wheelhouse as reliability. Generalizability means that not only is it, well, I get the consistent results, but it will be something that kind of maps out across places or across people or across issues similar. That it's something that you can take this. If I'm going to select 50 students, if I do it correctly, I use proper sampling procedures. The results I find from those 50 students, they will represent the university because I selected them appropriately. So what I find with them will extrapolate out to the university, that kind of a thing. That's what they're talking about there with that generalizability. All right. Scientific realist approach, where does idiographic? No, I hate terminology. You'll use those terms probably in quizzes or tests in your idiographic and nomothetic. You won't need to remember those ever again outside of here. Basically, what it means is, if I remember correctly, idiographic, idio is singular. So you're dealing with low number of cases, high number of variables kind of thing. Because the closer you look at something, the less you can actually see, right? And that's the way it always is. So if I'm not going to look too closely at it, I can see a whole lot more in terms of the number of cases. That's nomothetic, right? I'm trying to look at a large number of things to identify to some degree the themes there. And so you'll have a lot fewer of variables you can include just because there's too much data already. You start including a whole lot of data, a lot of variables, everything's significant because everything works together, right? That'd be like saying, how quickly can I identify someone? Okay, I've got their height, their age, their race. By the time you get down with it, it's like, I only need a couple more things. And it's like that list gets pretty small. You started same kind of thing with abstract concepts. Same thing. Okay, ecological fallacy, units of analysis, we've already talked about. Different units of analysis within the system. I typically just think about levels of society, right? The individual web to the federal government, right? Every way we can divide people in between, whether you're talking about racial, cultural, whether you're talking about locale, whether you're talking about whatever, it doesn't matter. You can separate people any way you want to. Time, that's where we're talking about cross-sectional longitudinal. I've already done that. Retrospective studies, approximate longitudinal studies. I don't like those. That's just me. When I say retrospective studies, they've got, I want to say they've got the opposite of that, where they try to do perspective stuff too. Basically what it is it will be a study, but it will ask about stuff. As you do that, it'll come up as one of those issues. Is temporal lensing is basically what it is. When you give people a certain frame of time, most people have no concept of time, right? Victimization questions are a key indicator. So if I ask someone within the last 6 months, were you a victim to any of these crimes? And I give a list, right? How many people are going to go through and identify that they were victims of that thing ever within the last 6 months, or it might have been 8 months ago. They're not going to remember. Was that February? Was that March? Was that 6 months ago, or was that 7? That kind of a thing. And so you got that kind of an issue that underlies that. Okay, causation units, time, key elements, yeah, phenomenon, crime, whatever. Studying stuff, time is important. Causation. Yeah, this is where I talk about those things I already talked about. So I can go a little fast with that. Idiographic. Many, perhaps unique considerations behind an action. So small number of cases, many variables. Fewer variables. Best for a general pattern, larger number of cases. All right, your causality. Empirical relationship, temporal order, no alternative explanations. That's basically the gist of it. So one has to precede the other, they have to be logically connected, and that spuriousness, spurious, false. That there's no other thing that makes that relationship false. That'd be like whenever I gave the explanation between summer weather and burglaries, right? There's a strong relationship there, but if I say it's the ice cream that's doing it, that's not right. Right? Because ice cream sales will track just like the warm weather does. You can make a relationship there. Doesn't mean it means anything. Okay, necessary and sufficient. So here's what they're talking about in terms of necessary and sufficient. So necessary means it's basically required for there to be, think about it this way. I like being free. Think about it in terms of degrees of freedom. At any time that you're dealing with any interaction between things, which is all statistics, you're taking, we'll say it's 1, 2, A, B. We'll do a simple Punnett square like what you find over in biology, right? We've got two things that are interacting, right? Each of them are dichotomous in nature. This one has 2 forms and this one has 2 forms. And we're trying to figure out, what the cut rate is for this across counties or whatever. So your options here in terms of what you're dealing with is if it's 2 by 2, you got this one, you've got this one, you've got this one, and then you've got this one with 2B, right? Well, the book will give it to you a few different examples. I want to say something like being charged or something like that. That's actually not a real, I'll run with that one. It's stuck in my head now. Okay, so it'd be like, are you going to be free or incarcerated? Right? Were you charged with a crime? Yes or no? Right? And so, there should be nobody here. Right? The justification needed for that to take place is not possible, technically speaking, from the process side, procedural side. There should be no one we have incarcerated that has not been charged with the crime. Right? That would be necessary. Right? You will not find anyone in this category. It is a possibility in terms of like, if you're looking at all of the possible options, but really, functionally, no, it is not. That's a necessary cause. Sufficient would be like, it needs to rise to an appropriate level. That would be like, we're trying to figure out whether or not we want to increase patrol or not, right? And so we're going to look at crime levels. And we're going to just say 3. High, medium, and low, right? And so depending on what your level is, maybe you start having your numbers in this category increasing. The number of counties in that category that have both high level of patrol and a high crime problem is also going to be related to the number of counties that have a medium level of crime problem. And guess what? That relationship there is, they probably also may not have a high level of patrol because it's just a medium level. And so you start pulling out those differences between those groups as you separate them out into different categories, right? What is that level that's needed to determine whether it's high, medium, or low, or whether it actually creates the change, right? That's what they're trying to get at there with sufficient. It's like, what would be the actual numbers here to dictate you being distinct, or at least distinct enough to cause an effect? That's it. Okay, validity and causal inference. Yeah. Certain threats to validity, yes. Whatever. Statistical conclusion. One of those threats. Whether change in expected cause is statistically associated with change in an effect. Statistical conclusion. Is it statistically significant? Right? How many cases you have, or is a determinant in the mathematical processes that we use to determine significance? Your N here is going to be involved. And as it is, the smaller it is, the weaker it makes everything. It's a limitation, right? They use this. It's basically a denominator. And so the strength of it, your findings are going to be inversely related to your size. And I think somewhere I should say related to your size, not inversely, but as that size goes up, your statistical significance will go up. Because as you have more people to measure against each other, the differences between people matter more, right? Same thing here with concepts of every type. If you have too many, you have too few. You get things that are significant or have large effect sizes that may or may not be accurate because you're on both sides of those equations. Right? Too large, you'll have really small effect sizes and everything's significant. Too few of people, your effect sizes are going to look very large, like it's having a huge effect, but it may not be significant. Internal validity. We have error in here. Not due to the effects of one or more variables. Non-random or systemic error. Threats that independent variable results from the relation between variables arises from the effect of some third variable. Basically, what they start talking about here is in the relationship with things that we're looking at. Is there something else that's really driving it? Maybe. If we don't account for it, what's it going to do? Well, our predictions are going to be massively off. So our errors change. You can actually map those out. If I put a map up and I had your data points, you put in your line of best fit, you can actually see some of those systemic errors. Why? Because what will happen is depending on what type of error it is, you might see that, okay, these dots are real close here, but they get serialistically wider around it as you go. That means your predictions here are less accurate as you go further out into the data, or vice versa. You can see it right there if you know what you're looking for. All right. Boom. I don't care about that. External validity. Does this stuff actually hold true? This is where we start getting into generalizability. That's another term for it. So it's like Kansas City experiment, patrol experiment. Whenever have we talked about them here? No. Okay. Basically, what they did in that one, it's a plot study. They took the city and I looked at the eraser for it, didn't I? Took the city and they divided it into a few different sections. And so you got Kansas City, and we'll say it was 0, 1, 2. We'll say it's equal. They broke the area up into a few different points in the city. Some areas had no patrol. Some areas had standard patrol. Some areas had increased patrol. And they ran it like that for a period of time to see what effects it had. They found no effects. It's one of those things that it's one of those studies that led to they call the nothing works era. Basically what it was is when you start messing with this kind of stuff, you're not actually affecting the pattern for crime itself necessarily. You're affecting people's perceptions. So they're measuring the wrong things. What also happened in this is when they're measuring the wrong things, they're not looking for the social side, which is what it really affects. This is like people's attitudes towards policing, that kind of stuff. What they had forgotten to take account for is these police officers want to do the job. They want to make sure people aren't left out alone and in dangerous situations. And when you deny them patrol to some degree, you can do that. So anytime that there were calls for service, officers would, I'm going to just cut through this area. And while I'm cutting through this area, responding to a call, I'm going to make sure my lights and sirens are on so everyone sees me. Right? Invalidating the study. One. The whole study was to prevent patrol in some areas to see what effect it would have. What happens is you have people who want to do the job and know its value so much they won't let it go. They're going to go and invalidate it. All right. And you see that in different areas where it's repeated too. Here it says Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, that did similar projects. All of them have slightly different findings, usually mixed at best. Anytime you find that in the research, you find mixed results or things that seem paradoxical. Take note of that because that means those are points of discussion where we don't know what's going on. That's the best part because that means, all right, pick a side of the argument if you want to, or just pick both sides and just start testing and see what happens. Beautiful. Construct validity. Are we actually dealing with the thing that we're dealing with, right? Does it actually represent the process involved? And is it, you know, we talk about that, they call it reification early in the, like one of the first couple chapters. It's treating something that's abstract as if it's something that's real. At the same time, we're really trying to figure out how things are working, right? And so what is it we're interested in? Like just preventive patrol. It's like, that's got nothing to do with patrol. It has to do with police visibility, right? We weren't looking at it right. Just like with this thing right here, it's like you got people who are missing and people who are forcibly found, right? If you find an overlap there, it might be some places where things go disappear, right? That's the distinction you're trying to make there. It's not either one of these things. It's somewhere between the two, maybe, or maybe it's something different. Maybe we're just looking at it incorrectly, right? That's the general idea between the shift from looking at criminals to looking at crime instances. It's the same shift that took place about 15, 20 years ago when I started shifting from looking at criminals and crime instances to looking at the types of places they're taking place at, the locations and those types of things. And so those are different lenses through which to view the same things. All right. Validity and causal inference summarized, biases, generalizability. Yep. You don't care about discussion questions. Drugs and crime. This is actually a really good one. And we'll probably finish this out and we'll stop here. Take this next time. So this is one where it's like this identifies the network for causal issues in our field. Basically, anytime you delve into this one, what you find is that everything goes everywhere. It literally does. It's like if you look at the relationship between drugs, does drug use cause crime? Does crime cause drug use? Do people do both? Right? Which one do people do first? Both, right? You'll have those that start out their criminal pathways will be they'll start with drug use, then they'll move into harder crimes. You'll have those start out with the violent crimes and move into drug use. You'll have those who do both at the same time for no reason. And so it's okay. So what are we trying to figure out here? I don't know. That kind of a thing. And so as you're trying to set that up, what are you trying to look at? Are you trying to pull out the effect that drugs have on society? You want to see that link between, if you want to do it across time, what you do is you look at crime types in general, specify drug types, watch those counts across time to see what effect it has on the neighborhoods, right? As you watch that, basically what happens, that's sorry, kind of represented in the theories in different areas. But basically what you look at is drugs cause crime just as much as crimes cause drugs, right? You look at drug use moving into a neighborhood, what happens is everyone in that neighborhood starts using drugs. So does crime increase, right? Crime moves into a neighborhood, drug use follows shortly thereafter, right? If you're looking at drug use in general, the biggest landmark for an entire community going south, open air drug markets. You start seeing people doing open air drug transactions and in any instance, like out on the street. Guess what? You're only a couple of years till that thing just kind of just drops off, right? And there's just nothing goes in that area. Why? Because it's a social thing. Just as much as it is legal, you have that social element of people trying to rally against them. How effective are they? How long has that been a problem? How ineffective have they been? Right? That's the kind of stuff we get into. It is something that is a spider web. There are recursive effects in all directions across all domains. Having a very clear idea of what it is you're trying to pull out. That's the key thing. And most of the time you won't really know until you start getting the data. It's always exploratory in nature. Cool. With that, we'll pick up with, I guess, scientific realism next time and knock out the rest of these slides as we also start showing some numbers and some steps there. Cool. Okay. You guys feel like you learned something? Cool. All right. Well, we'll pick up again on Wednesday. With that.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
What is the problem statement supposed to be about, and how many sentences do you want per paragraph?
Paragraph, usually really it's about 5. Smallest paragraph's usually about 3, but 5 is usually a good one. Problem statement would be like identifying what the problem is here with this one. Like this one, like if you were to run with this, it would be identifying the, you'd have to look to see how the one's written there, because I can't remember exactly how it had it written. But basically it's like, what is the crux of the dilemma here? Like with this one, we got literally the intersection of where people go missing and where people have to go and live because they have no choice but to be found, right? There's something in between there that we want to pull out. For you and your individual research, if you've got something in mind you want to do yourself, just start with if you talked on something already, because I can't remember, you can start with that. If you haven't, and you just got like a general idea for what types of problems interest you, take a stab at it, and then whenever you've got a good draft out, you can submit it, or you can just email it to me, and then we'll talk from there. That's really nice. It's actually the rest of my schedule for the rest of the semester is going to be clearing up. The base stuff from 2 weeks ago. Done. That was a nightmare. But it's running for another year, so that all worked out. Let's see. In terms of that, guess I'll catch up with you guys on Wednesday. What do you think? All right. Well, take care, and I will talk to you then.